He to provide that common perspective is Björn Fuchs, who, as you all know, is the chair of the VNL-OK Trade Association. Please, Björn, come to the stage. We're eager to hear your perspective. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We've heard from industry captains, we've heard from the KSA, and we've heard some staggering numbers from Josh just a moment ago. But for now, let's start with some wisdom from the famous Dutch football philosopher Johan Cruyff. Because once said, roughly translated to English, often something has to happen before something happens. And these legendary words almost seem permanently applicable to the Dutch online gambling market. At the end of June, the future and viability of the Dutch online gambling market is on the table in the political agenda, in the political debate on gambling policy in Parliament. And it is an understatement to say that a lot is about to happen. Within VNL-OK, much has happened as well. We are very proud that we have successfully completed the onboarding of all active former NOGA members. And I would like to express my sincere gratitude to new and existing members, to my fellow board members, and especially Daan van Hoogmoed, our policy advisor, for making this possible. Today, VNL-OK stands as the singular strong voice of the Dutch licensed online gambling industry. We now represent the majority of all gambling brands in the Netherlands and approximately 80% of the licensed GGR. This consolidation is not about market power, it's about responsibility. Which ties in directly to the arrival of Rosemarijn Dral, who I've asked to stand up, but she won't, as the new director of VNL-OK. With her political experience and unwavering focus on a sustainable and responsible gambling market, our very core is reinforced. A structurally healthy and safe online gambling market is what connects all relevant stakeholders, inside this room and outside. However, there is less connection and alignment when it comes to the perspectives being applied by all those stakeholders. One dominant perspective in the public debate is the loud and repetitive call for the normalization of gambling to be reversed. This narrative constantly points to October 2021, as if the legalization of the Dutch online market suddenly made online gambling visible and accessible. This is classic Alice in Wonderland logic. After more than a century, I think that the Mad Hatter is probably quite proud that his fairy tale reasoning is still alive in Dutch society. It is this kind of reasoning that risks dragging the Dutch online market down the rabbit hole. It completely illogically ignores factual history. Digitalization and mobile internet were not invented in October 2021. Well before, huge amounts of online gambling content were already visible on YouTube and Facebook. Estimates in those days showed that over 1 million people were already gambling online. The Dutch legalization did not create or open a market, it created a legal protective framework around an already existing market. And yet, today, some politicians seem convinced that a total advertisement ban is the silver bullet, hoping that demand will disappear and that denormalization will become a reality. But recent science also tells us otherwise, because a recent study of the University of Amsterdam investigated the digital timelines of vulnerable young adults. Their social feeds are heavily saturated with foreign illegal gambling content, and by far, in the past years, this has been considered as the most influential factor for the normalization of gambling. On the other hand, advertisements from Dutch legal operators only represent a small fraction of all visible digital gambling content. Thus, banning Dutch operators from advertising does not empty those social media feeds. It simply creates an additional vacuum. A vacuum which will be filled by aggressive illegal operators that completely ignore Dutch laws. A similar effect was seen when the ban on untargeted advertisement was introduced. The most recent monitoring report of the Dutch Gambling Authority, the KSA, again shows that the Dutch legal online gambling market is increasingly under pressure. When we look beyond political rhetoric and focus on hard macroeconomic data, the signals become deeply concerning. As we've seen in the presentation before this one, across the European online gambling landscape, there was growth in 2025. But when we look at the Netherlands, we see something completely different. In 2025, the revenue in the Dutch licensed online gambling market declined by nearly 19%. 19%. Such a decline does not mean that the underlying demand for gambling has magically disappeared. It means that the demand has been bleeding directly into the illegal online gambling market. And in terms of turnover, the illegal market in the Netherlands has grown continuously over the past several years. Almost 50 cents of every euro gambled online goes to the illegal market. And currently, most Dutch gamblers are active on legal gambling websites. An estimated minority of 10%, which can be differed, gambles on illegal gambling websites. This balance is incredibly fragile and moving in the wrong direction. Because recent data also shows that the number of people who gamble exclusively on illegal gambling websites is increasing. Disproportionate regulations and layer upon layer of additional restrictions will make the legal offering less visible and less attractive. This will irreversibly lead to a further exodus of more Dutch gamblers towards the illegal, unprotected market. Licensed operators in the Netherlands operate under some of the strictest duty of care regulations in the world. They monitor player behavior, intervene, pay substantial taxes, and contribute to addiction prevention. And of course, I am preaching to the converted when I say here that illegal operators are doing none of that. Instead, they are actually specifically targeting the very vulnerable groups that we are trying to protect. When overregulation pushes more players outside the legal ecosystem, they are left exposed to an unregulated, unprotected, digital Wild West. A space in which illegal gambling campaigns dominate. As you've heard, recent research commissioned by VNLK in the last couple of months has repeatedly shown staggering statistics. Over 90% of all gambling advertisement campaigns on Facebook and Instagram are illegal. Alongside strict enforcement by the KSA, maintaining a sufficiently visible legal online market remains an essential instrument for the protection of Dutch consumers. What we need from policymakers are not knee-jerk political reactions. And don't get me wrong, VNLK does not advocate less regulation. We advocate coherent, stable, and effective regulation. The bedrock of the Dutch legal system is built upon the principle that adults are legally competent and have personal responsibility. A system that disproportionately turns this principle upside down and treats gamblers as incapable until proven otherwise will inevitably backfire. At present, gambling policy, fiscal policy, and healthcare policy appear to operate in isolated and sometimes counterproductive silos. Protecting the Dutch consumer and preventing gambling-related harm should stand coherently at the center of all these policies. And this cannot be achieved by selectively choosing some parts of the puzzle that happen to look good and attractive in a headline. We need a holistic strategy in which regulation, taxes, and healthcare work together in a system and coherent and effective towards a system that protects the consumer, and it is based on facts, proportionality, and evidence. Because if policy fails, it is the consumer that pays the price. And that price, ladies and gentlemen, does not have a price tag. the human consequences of gambling addiction can be devastating. And therefore, the recent latest report concerning the number of gambling addicts must be taken extremely seriously. That number increased by 13% in 2025. Once again, sensational content and headlines seemed to prevail over factual nuance when the latest report was published. I quote, "You cannot drink away tens of thousands of euros in a single evening through alcohol consumption. Gambling can escalate so quickly that someone may lose 100,000 euros in one night." A somewhat untruthful and unconstructive comparison that selectively ignores the deaths and physical harm caused by drunk driving. And simultaneously, it contributes to a polarizing narrative that the increase of gambling addiction is fully caused solely by the legalization of the Dutch legal market. However, the report in itself reveals two important flaws in that perspective. Firstly, the largest group of registered gambling addicts consists of individuals from whom it remains unknown where they actually gamble. And secondly, no distinction is being made between legal and illegal online gambling. Therefore, conclusions regarding policy change should always include a healthy degree of factual nuance and additional research to ensure that proportional and really effective policy decisions are being made. And yes, the unfortunate truth is that even in a legal market, there will be problem gambling and gambling addiction. And although it remains a relatively small minority, prevention of that must always remain the #1 priority moving forward. Moving forward, the members of VNLK are fully aware that they cannot simply sit back and relax. Licensed operators do not get the luxury of relaxing. We understand our unique responsibility. Every day, we must prove that we deserve the trust that comes with holding a license. And therefore, today, VNLK shares 3 commitments. Firstly, VNLK members will continue to improve and to innovate their duty of care. While most players gamble safely as a form of entertainment, the small minority that develops problematic behavior has our full and undivided attention. Translating words into action, VNLK is currently researching a project that will allow players who require help to be directly and warmly transferred from operators to specific care platforms like Open Over Gokken and Geldfit. No cold handovers or delays, just immediate and genuine human support when it matters most. Additionally, VNLK is also researching technical possibilities for a shared intervention exchange platform between licensed operators. We believe that any future overarching system should focus on the behavior of problem gamblers and interventions, rather than imposing additional blanket restrictions for all gamblers. Secondly, VNLK and its members will remain in an active and transparent dialogue with the gambling authority, the government, healthcare professionals, and all relevant stakeholders. More so than ever, our industry must speak with one coherent voice. VNLK will never retreat into an industry bubble. We will continue to openly share data, insights, operational expertise, so future policies can be built on facts rather than emotion. And last but not least, VNLK will significantly intensify its fight against the illegal market in the next coming weeks. The ongoing growth of the illegal gambling market is only possible because it is supported by a digital ecosystem of facilitators, like payment service providers, banks, and digital social media platforms. Facilitating illegal gambling websites is prohibited under Dutch law. Yet, it continues on a very massive scale. The Alliance Against Illegal Gambling, coordinated by the Gambling Authority, has effectively united a broad coalition of the willing in the last couple of months. Together, they have achieved promising progress. However, The fight against illegal online gambling remains highly complex. The scale and its revenues remain enormous, so stronger results are required. This has forced VNLK to begin preparing legal instruments and legal procedures towards these facilitators. If you facilitate illegal operators targeting Dutch consumers, we will hold you legally and financially accountable. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, the Dutch online gambling market remains at a critical crossroad. On one hand, we can allow the market to disappear down the rabbit hole, down a path of disproportionate additional restrictions that punish responsible consumers and cripple the market, quietly hoping that bans will erase demand, while simultaneously rolling out the red carpet for illegal operators. Or, on the other hand, we can choose the path of facts, data, proportionality, and real dialogue. VNLK will continue to choose the latter. We hold the safety and protection of Dutch consumers in the highest regard. We firmly believe that a structural, healthy, sufficiently visible, and sufficiently attractive legal market is essential for the effective protection of Dutch consumers. Therefore, we urge members of Parliament on June 24th to focus on that effective protection, on a viable and sustainable future for the Dutch legal online gambling market, a future based on facts, proportionality, and responsibility. The members of VNLK are dedicated to a safe and sustainable future for the Dutch market. When it comes to our responsibility, we will not only talk the talk, but we will also keep walking the walk together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Björn. Thank you. That was very inspiring. I think there was one question from the audience we wanted to share with you. It's in front of you, Björn. Yeah. Björn, do you think Dutch policymakers treat the 21 market size as a fixed baseline without accepting that the market was already on an upward trend there?
I think, again, we were talking about perspective. We as an industry should have also made more effort to have a proper measurement of what was happening in that moment. And I do think that going from a legal market which was 0 to something else was always 100%. So yeah, policymakers could have been more enlightened, but it remains our task at this point to keep that insights coming to them and get facts and reality and proportionality on the table also on the June 24th.
Great. Well, let's keep that coming. Thank you, Björn, for joining us. Thank you.